How Trump's WHO withdrawal risks a global and American health crisis. Imagine this: a deadly virus spreads undetected, passing silently through flights, infecting passengers and crew, crossing borders in hours. Now, imagine the world's most powerful country cut off from the very organization designed to prevent this. This isn't a nightmare, it's the reality Donald Trump has set in motion by withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. How Trump's withdrawal from WHO could make America a sick nation. A dangerous gamble. In 2020, Donald Trump announced his decision to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization, accusing it of inefficiency and bias. But this decision doesn't just jeopardize global health, it makes America uniquely vulnerable to a cascade of crises. Pandemics don't respect borders. In today's interconnected world, isolation isn't protection, it's a guarantee of disaster. And with new threats like bird flu and the mysterious VirusX already spreading, the stakes couldn't be higher. The looming threats: bird flu and VirusX. The US is already battling outbreaks of bird flu, a disease that's devastating the poultry industry and raising fears of a mutation that could infect humans. Such a mutation would trigger a pandemic with catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, in China, a new pathogen, dubbed VirusX, is spreading. Early reports describe COVID-like symptoms, and experts are watching closely for signs of global transmission. WHO is already working with international partners to monitor and mitigate the threat. But by leaving WHO, the US cuts itself off from this critical information. This creates a vacuum in information, a perfect environment for viruses to spread undetected. Without early warnings, the US risks becoming ground zero for the next pandemic. How flights spread disease faster than ever. In our interconnected world, air travel is the fastest way diseases spread across the world. During COVID-19, flights carried the virus from Wuhan to New York, Milan, and beyond in a matter of weeks. And it's not just passengers who are at risk. Crew members can unknowingly carry viruses across borders, infecting new regions within hours. This is where WHO plays a critical role. Working with ICAO and IATA, WHO establishes protocols to limit disease spread on flights, from passenger screening to in-flight sanitation. Without these globally agreed protocols, flights become a significant health hazard. The US risks isolation in global aviation. There's another danger. If US flights don't comply with WHO protocols, other countries may ban them altogether. During COVID-19, many nations required proof of compliance with WHO guidelines to accept international flights. If the US is no longer part of this system, its airlines could face restrictions, disrupting trade, tourism, and global connectivity. This would cripple the aviation industry and further isolate America on the world stage. Deportations, a breeding ground for infections. Trump's deportation policies add another dangerous layer to the public health crisis. Thousands of people are being detained in confined spaces, often with inadequate health screenings, before being deported to countries around the world. These cramped conditions are a breeding ground for cross-infections, as detainees, staff, and crew are exposed to potentially deadly pathogens. Without proper vetting for infectious diseases, Deportations risk exporting these viruses to new regions, creating hotspots in countries with fewer healthcare resources. This isn't just a global problem, it's an American one, too. The viruses carried by deportees can easily spread among crew and border staff, re-entering the US through other channels. The lack of coordination with WHO and its partners leaves these deportations dangerously unmanaged. This chaotic approach, including use of military assets, creates the perfect storm for a virus to go undetected, spreading silently across continents. Trump's suppression of pandemic news. Trump's threat of withdrawal from WHO is compounded by his administration's policy of suppressing pandemic news. Shutting down critical information channels leaves the public, and even health officials, in the dark. When transparency is replaced with silence, pandemics spread unchecked. This lack of information doesn't just harm public health, it undermines the very policies Trump is trying to implement. A sick nation can't work, travel, or thrive. The bigger picture: whose role in global health? To understand what's at stake, let's look at how WHO protects the world. WHO doesn't work alone, it collaborates with ICAO, IATA, and WMO to coordinate global health efforts. Together, they develop health protocols for aviation, ensuring passengers and crew are protected during outbreaks. WHO provides the data airlines need to adjust flight routes, implement safety measures, and reduce transmission risks. The World Meteorological Organization tracks weather patterns that influence disease outbreaks, like malaria and dengue, allowing WHO to allocate resources effectively. These partnerships save lives. Without WHO, the US loses access to this vital network, and with it, the ability to protect its citizens. The global and American fallout. The US is the largest donor to WHO, contributing nearly 15% of its funding. This money supports vaccination programs, pandemic preparedness, and disease eradication efforts worldwide. When the US withdraws, these programs suffer, and so does the global health system. But the consequences don't stop there. A weaker WHO means slower responses to outbreaks, which will inevitably reach the US, the consequences of ignoring science. By ignoring science and undermining global health systems, Trump's policies leave the US dangerously exposed. Diseases don't stop at borders, and pandemics don't wait for politics. Without whose guidance, the US faces delayed responses, limited resources, and a higher death toll in every future outbreak. Global health is a shared responsibility. Without WHO, the US isn't just abandoning the world, it's abandoning itself. Share this video, contact your representatives, and demand that America stops this crazy idea and fight for global health. The WHO isn't perfect, but it's indispensable. Its partnerships with ICAO, IATA, and WMO ensure the world can fight pandemics effectively. America's withdrawal doesn't just hurt the world, it makes America sicker, weaker, and less prepared. In a world where health threats travel at the speed of a plane, the only thing deadlier than a virus is silence. Please subscribe, share, comment below, and like us.